Remind us that we sometimes are more judgmental than Jesus would like us to be, and I think that's probably true. Sometimes we can be a judgmental lot, I guess, and I don't mean necessarily the people in this room or on this screen, but Christians can sometimes perhaps be a judgmental kind of lot. Um, that said, we need to talk about this verse because I don't think it's quite as simple as sometimes people make it out to be. And we need to talk about this section because uh, Jesus is definitely saying something that we need to take seriously here. It just might not be exactly what we think it is. So he says in Matthew 7:1, and again, this is kind of a discernible shift, change in topic within this section. He's talked about not worrying, and he's talked about uh, being clear who our master is. We can't serve both God and money. He's talked about that. Now he sort of shifts his thinking a little bit, shifts his words to address this idea of this topic of judging. And he says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you'll be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give to dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Um, so, what do you see? What do you see Jesus? What do you hear Jesus saying here? What's his focus? What's he concerned about? What does he mean when he says, "Do not judge"? What is exactly is he telling us not to do?
One way to put it is don't pigeonhole people. It's an
Okay,
old saying because we're not really qualified to do that. We don't
okay,
know everything we think we know about other people. You know, all of us have different things in our lives that we don't. The rest of us don't know about. So that's why we're not in the right position to judge.
very true. Don't pigeonhole. That's probably a good way to think about that. I don't know. Anybody else have thoughts on that word pigeonhole, people?
It's a very old saying, but still, I think we know what it means.
I really enjoyed. I've only seen a couple of seasons of it. The TV show Ted Lasso,
Mhm.
and there was an episode early on in the season in which Ted Lasso talks about being at his son's school and seeing a quote. Erroneously, the quote is attributed to Carl Sandburg. Carl Sandburg never said it, but the quote is great anyway. The quote is, "Be curious, not judgmental." And I like that. I like that comparison, or I like that because when you're judgmental, you don't have any more questions, right? When you're judging someone, all the questions in your mind are answered. Um, you don't need to know anything more about this person to pigeonhole them, as Dan put it, to put them
Right.
in this box and say, "This is the person. This is who this person is." Um,
Right. Yeah, we're kind of a know-it-all.
yeah, yeah,
We
and
know it
and
all.
and so I kind of like that quote, sort of suggesting that the opposite of, and maybe the antidote for being judgmental, is being curious. Instead of making proclamations about people, asking questions. You know. who is this person? Why do they, why do they believe this? Why did they do this? What exactly is going on in this person's life? What do I need to know? What do I not know that I need to know, before I, even try uh, to come up with some sort of verdict on this person. Um, and I like that. I like that idea that maybe one of the ways uh, to not be judgmental is to, when we're sort of tempted to make a proclamation about somebody in our minds or in our words or however, uh, maybe we change that to a question. You know, who is this person, and what do we need to know?
Uh, this version says, "Do not condemn,
Yeah.
rather acquit,"
Do not condemn what?
or rather acquit,
Rather acquit. That's interesting.
or forgive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, and that may be one way that might be helpful is it recognizes uh, people. I think the mistake we make here is that Jesus is saying, you know, never, never talk about uh, the wrong somebody might do. Never challenge somebody in their actions. Never challenge. Um, and 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 I think Jesus himself uh, would violate that if that's what he meant. Jesus sometimes is certainly willing to say, you know, somebody has done something wrong, and somebody has acted in a way that is hypocritical or uh, callous or unjust, and he's he's willing to say that, and throughout the Bible there are times in which unjust and evil and selfish and hypocritical behavior is challenged. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what I was thinking is that do not judge because basically when we judge, we see ourselves. And it's the lens in which we view others that make us hypocritical because who I am is what I see, if that makes sense. And so he's saying, be careful because I don't want you looking at others. I want you looking at yourself and changing your own heart or your own behavior or your own actions. So I think what I see is based on a lot of my own experiences and I project. And so I think we do that when we look at others and judge them. Oh, they shouldn't be doing that. Well, where does that come from? That's not a curiosity like you're talking about. That comes from some experience I've had or some hurt I've had, something that makes me see the other in the light in which I see them. And so
Yeah.
I think it's really powerful that he calls us hypocrites and some and that means that I do the same thing I'm calling you out on. And yeah.
Yeah, and let's not be uh quick uh to condemn, as Allen's translation says. Let's not be quick to when you condemn someone, you basically sort of you're they are nothing more than this mistake. They are nothing more than this failure. They are nothing more than this this poor choice that they've made. This is who they are. You're reducing people to their worst moments, and we don't want people doing that to us, right? We don't, and that's why I think the the optometrist verse in verses 3 and following about the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, and we can we can get really picky about sort of calling out the people around us while we fail to see uh, our own failures and our own lack of uh, yeah. Go ahead, Colette.
Yeah, and I think that failure to see ourselves and also that condemnation when we're judging others, it says a lot about if you be around people who judge others, they have a low self view of them of who they are. And so that whole
Often.
condemning of how you judge others, you will be judged. And that may be from God, but it's also from self. And the people I'm around who are judgmental, oh, look at them. And they, when you talk to them privately, they're beating themselves up. They use that same standard.
Yeah.
So the reflection is how they see themselves. They're seeing others and they're condemning themselves and not appreciating. You can tell them 100 times, God forgives you or God loves you. No, I'm no good. No, I'm no this. And then they turn around and they will judge others. And I think it's a great practical research is with as you're talking to people, people who judge others tend to be very down on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. They tend to go either down on themselves or I think it can easily be, I don't know what's going on over there. Sorry, we're having anyway, everybody's okay. So yeah, I think yeah, you're right. I think often the people who are judgmental toward others are, I'm gonna have to kick some people out of here, clearly. I have people leaving. So um, um, yeah, so I think that that's often the case. You're often right that that sort of attitude. And I wonder if that's not partially, at least, what Jesus means when he says, in the same way you judge others, you'll be judged. With the measure you use, it'll be measured to you. One way of thinking about that is God, will judge you in the way you judge others. God will use the same standard on you as you use on others. But he doesn't exactly say that. And I wonder if it's at least partially, if that sort of condemnation and judgment that we receive is because we're sort of immersing ourselves in that kind of way of living, that kind of life where we're inviting the criticism of others and we're inviting even our own self condemnation when we do fail. Um, so I'm not sure. I could be probably either. But you're right. I think you're absolutely right that we can sometimes uh, that sometimes the people who are the most judgmental of others are also look to themselves with that same standard. Um, and Jesus wants to remove us from that. Now, there's also, Jesus says in John, I think it's John 7, stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. I think there are also times where um, making a judgment about a situation and action is necessary. And by that, I think Jesus means not the condemnation of a person, but the recognition of uh, a sinful choice that has hurt someone else or that is threatening to there are times where we have to say, I think as people of God, I think there are times when we have to be able to say that's wrong. That's just wrong. That action is wrong. That we're not necessarily condemning the person who did the action because we recognize we've got logs in our eyes too, right? We know. But I think there have to be times where we are able to say, um, this is wrong. If Jesus tells us to do something and we do the opposite, I think we have to be able to say that's wrong. That's a sin. I think we have to be able to confront that and be honest about that, and not have to pretend that that's not the case. But I don't think that's quite the same thing that Jesus is talking about here when he says, "Don't judge another person." Does that make sense? I know that's a nuance, and that's not a popular nuance. And sometimes people go, you're just trying to get around what Jesus says plainly about not judging. But we all recognize sometimes when we are hurt or offended or at least recognize sinful behavior. We all do that. We all recognize that that's the case sometimes. And so, how do you then respond to that without being condemnatory of another person? And I think that's the tension Jesus is sort of asking us to hold here. That we can judge rightly about actions and about events without condemning another person unfairly and unrighteously.
I think it's like you say, judge the action, but it's not up to us to condemn the person.
Yeah.
You know, we can say stealing is wrong and somebody that robbing a bank is wrong. But before we start judging someone, we need to look at our lives. Maybe we haven't robbed a bank, but have we been greedy
Yeah.
in some areas, you know, with kind of the same motivations before we just take it out on somebody else?
And yeah, and I think too, um, Jesus didn't seem to think that other people were nothing more than the sum total of their bad choices, right? Jesus thought people were more than that. Um, you know, people can be forgiven, people can change, people can be different, people can, thinking of the woman in John 8, go and sin no more, right? Jesus says, I don't condemn you, but I want you to go and live a different life, live a better life than you've been living. I want that for you. I'm not going to condemn you. I'm not going to stand here and throw the stones. But I also know that your life isn't what it could be. So go and sin no more. Um, I think that's kind of the balance that we're talking about, right? That we can recognize uh, sins and failures and moral failures and ethical failure. We can recognize all that. We can recognize unjust behavior um, without condemning the person who perhaps did that. And as we do, we recognize um, our own logs, right? The beams in our own eyes, and recognize that we don't have it all together either, and we sure would like some mercy for our failures.
Yeah, Patrick, I think Jesus is not telling us not to, I mean, condemn people for the wrong that you see that somebody is doing. You shouldn't condemn the fellow. No, it's not telling us that. If somebody is doing wrong, that's the reason why he said we should look after each other. That means if a fellow is doing wrong, you need to tell him what you are doing. Step that you are taking is wrong. Fine. But legalism take you out of the system. Legalism take you out of mercy.
Yeah.
The moment you put a legalism against a brother or a sister, you take him out of mercy. That time you don't have this right again about that fellow. You leave it to something else.
Yeah.
That's the reason why he is speaking to his children as we the Christian to be mindful of those things. Because the moment you judge the fellow, you put him in legalism, that means you take him out of context, different thing together. But for telling the fellow what you are doing is wrong, that is not the problem at all. For correct somebody, what you are doing, or what I heard from you, or this thing, question the fellow, or to know exactly what is going on, and tell him, no, you shouldn't do it like this, go by this and this. And that is not what, I don't think that's what Jesus was saying. But sending the legalism, that means you take him out of mercy. That one, you don't, you put into a different thing.
That's a
Yeah.
good line. I'm going to steal that from you sometime. When you treat someone with legalism, you take them out of mercy.
Yes.
You remove mercy from the equation, and that's exactly right. And we never want to be guilty of removing mercy from the equation, right? We never want that. And because we are people who need mercy. And I would even go a step further and say when it is necessary to confront someone or to say, no, I think that was wrong. We can do that with love, and we can do that with humility, and we can do that with a full knowledge that, somebody's going to need to confront us one day. We can do that with sort of the understanding of, this is not to condemn you. This is not to say you're worth less than this is just to say this action, this particular thing, is in my view is wrong. So yeah, and I think we sort of see that distinction. But I really like the idea that curiosity, genuine curiosity about people, will help us be less judgmental. If we're if you're genuinely interested in another person, it's going to be hard to treat them in a judgmental way because you're wanting to know about them. You're not wanting to dismiss them. Judgment in the end dismisses someone, writes them off. This is who they are. And yeah,
I think the best example we could come up with for where we need to use good judgment is with our children.
yeah,
They are innocent, they are vulnerable, and we have to be very careful who they associate with. Maybe you hire a babysitter, for instance. You send them to school, you send them to nursery school, whatever, and you have to use good judgment concerning those people that are going to take care of your children. So there's a case where you're going to judge those people whether they're worthy of taking care of your children or they're not. Now that's one example. I'm sure we could think of others too, but my opinion is we're not to judge people, but we are to use good judgment in dealing with our fellow men, whether they're younger or they're older. Because there are always going to be people out there that are going to try to take advantage of us, or the church, or whatever. That's my 2 cents worth.
and I think it's interesting when Jesus says, "Don't judge, stop judging by appearances and make a right judgment." One of the mistakes we make so often is judging people just on the basis of fleeting impressions, right? And just external things. And we dismiss them because there's something about them that just doesn't sit right with us. And maybe I'm just talking to myself by saying that. I don't know, but I think that can be a tendency. And so that statement about let's be willing to let's be a little slower on the draw, slower on the trigger, and a little more willing to um, to learn and to know someone a little more and to know their situation and to try to be a presence for good and uh, for change in their lives. Who's your friend there, Darlena? She had her dog. Okay, good. So other comments about those 5 verses. Verse 6 then is sort of a little bit of an enigmatic statement of Jesus is don't give dogs what is sacred. Don't throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Don't waste what is holy on people who are unholy. New Living Translation. Yeah. So generally speaking, that is we have the church generally has interpreted that, I think, as sort of a recognition that there are some people that don't want to hear anything you have to say about Jesus, don't want to hear anything you have to say about faith, don't want your forgiveness, don't want your understanding. And Jesus is basically saying, don't waste time with them. Don't waste your time and your effort with those kinds of folks. Which interestingly seems to sort of turn what he just said in verses 1 through 5 on its head. And I'm not entirely sure it's easy to sort of rationalize Jesus using that language about people. But perhaps he has in mind just the sort of the idea of recognize when the gospel is not going to be heard. Recognize when Jesus, he tells his disciples when he sends them out, if a town won't receive you, just shake the dust off your feet and go on to the next town. And maybe maybe one of the way to take this is from the perspective of, we can sometimes feel like we've failed if people don't believe in Jesus. If we can't, we sometimes feel like we're failures. Maybe we did something wrong. Maybe we didn't say this right. Maybe, we could have done better. We could have been more loving. We could have been less judgmental. There's all kinds of ifs and ands and buts. And I think maybe here Jesus is just kind of saying there are times when um, the best you do is not gonna do it, and just move on. Just move on. Don't waste what is sacred in a situation in which people don't want to receive it. Um,
In other words, don't waste your time with hardened hearts. There
yeah,
are
I
people
mean,
with hardened
yeah.
hearts out there.
Or at least hearts that are hard in that moment, right? And
Like
maybe
Pharaoh.
one thing we might say is their hearts might not be hard forever, and perhaps somebody else will come along and complete what we began in that person's heart, in that person. We don't know how that works, but there are times when it's perhaps best just um, to step on to something else and to someone else and to another context, another place, another person. And we don't write them off, but um, neither do we continue to give what is holy to those who are not.
Don't spin your wheels, in other words.
Don't spin your wheels.
You spin your wheels all day and not get anywhere. Well, there's a point where you're going to move on. That's all.
And maybe it's a good balance for, the first 5 verses where, we're not judging and we don't want to turn away from anybody and we don't want to give up on anyone. Um, but maybe there's a time sometimes to give up on not the person, but on, what you're trying to do in that moment, to let it go and to move on to somebody else who's willing to hear. So then, verse 7, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone, or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. What are your thoughts about those verses, especially 7 through 11 there? What's the picture of God that you get from those verses?
An indulgent father.
Indulgent father. I like that. An indulgent father. He wants to give good gifts, right? He wants to give good gifts to his children. Just like you, it's a rabbinic argument that was used by a lot of teachers in Jesus' time. It goes from lesser to greater. You fathers, you parents, if you have a kid that asks for bread, I'm hungry, Dad. Can I have a piece of bread? Does are you going to give him a rock? No. You want to give him what he needs. You're not going to give him a snake instead of a fish. It's just not something a parent does. Because you want what's good for your children. You want to give them good gifts. Jesus says, even though you are evil, can be good parents, don't you think that your Father in heaven will give good gifts to those who ask? It's a picture of God that sort of goes against the idea of God doesn't listen to me. God doesn't care about what I need. God doesn't hear me when I cry out. It's a picture of God that assures us that He does. Even though I think we've all probably had the experience of wondering, why didn't we get what we asked for? Why didn't God do what we asked for Him to do? And maybe we at various times come to understandings about that and recognize that it wasn't for the best, or it wasn't really what we needed at the moment, or God had something else in mind for us. But it's not a picture. It's not a guarantee that every time you ask God for something, He's going to give it to you. But it is a guarantee about the kind of God that we serve, the kind of God who is our Father in heaven, who wants to give good gifts to His children. So what do? You ask and you seek and you knock. You're not shy about asking for what we need. You're not shy about asking your Father in heaven for those good gifts. And I think that's a really important thing for us to understand about God. He's not reluctant. He's an indulgent Father, as Diana put it. I like that. He's inclined to give to us. He's inclined to give us good things. Sometimes we don't know what good things are, right? Sometimes our understanding of what is good is what scratches the itch of the moment or whatever, and it's kind of like children, it would be good if I could have cookies for breakfast every day of my life. That's a child kind of thing, right? That would be good. I would love that. And a good parent says, no, but I'll give you this, and it's really good, and you'll enjoy it, and it'll be more healthy for you. I think somebody was going to say something. Go ahead.
I think the important thing is that we understand that when we ask, seek, and knock, our prayers will be answered according to God's will. That's what some people forget. I heard a guy a couple of weeks ago said he's going to keep knocking and asking, and he expects God to do exactly what he was asking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think you know who I'm talking about. Our friend in the parking lot, but he was adamant about that. I told him he's going to answer your prayer according to His will, not yours, and he didn't want to accept that. And we have to understand it,
God knows what's good better than we do. God knows what is a good gift better than we know. And so, you keep asking, you keep seeking, you keep knocking, knowing that God is inclined to give you these good gifts. And you don't have to wring it out of Him. You don't have to force Him. You don't have to coerce Him. You don't have to, perform for Him before He'll give you what you need. He's a good, as the song says, He's a good Father, right? And He wants to give good gifts to His children.
I think God just wants to show us a good parentals.
Yeah.
Because in this life, no one will expect you to be higher than them like your parents. Yes, it's a challenging, but no matter how the situation is, your parents will look at you always. Their expectation is you should be better than them. But those out there that you are moving with them, they will challenge you not to be better than them. But for your parents, they always want you to be better than them, so that when your name is mentioned, the part of the glory goes to them. Good. If we parents are always look at our children on that manner, then God that we are serving, if what we ask God every year when we begin the year, what we requested from God is what God give us, then there won't be any, problem again. We can just go ahead and then sleep. We won't have a problem again. Because He do everything on His own time. Even the parents, not everything that your children ask is what you give to them. No. Sometimes they request certain things. You tell them that this one, no, I will not give it to you.
Right.
Or it is not the time for me to give you this thing. Or it is not the time to provide you this thing. You are not there yet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
clear that we should see it in a good parental guidance.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I also, with the
Right.
asking, the knocking, and all of that, I've heard people, they pray, they do all of that, but they say, God, if it's not good, if it's not your will, if it's not what's best, with an understanding that we can be nearsighted and not understanding the long game, not understanding really what is good for us.
Mhm.
So that's what the maturity, I guess, that comes with us being Christians and getting answers of no. when we've knocked and asked, and we won't kick down the door. We go, okay, like you said, hindsight. Oh, I see why that didn't happen, or thank you that that didn't happen. So we have to keep the word good in front of us when we are knocking, asking, and seeking.
Yeah.
God knows what's good, that we just think we know what is best for us, but He really knows what's good. And if we pray with that mindset, again, it takes us having some experiences of no and having hindsight of 2020 to understand I'm going to pray with that same little adjective there when I pray, although I want this, but if that's not good, help me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. And I love though that he says, but ask and seek and knock. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Don't be timid. Ask, seek, and knock. Tell him what you want. Tell him what you think you need. Tell him what you think is good. And, then yeah, you got to trust that he knows better. But don't be shy. Don't be timid in asking God for what you need. Um, Um, so then, verse 12 is, of course, the golden rule. In everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. It's been said before, Jesus didn't exactly come up with this uh, on his own, seemingly. He's actually quoting something that was used by other rabbis and other teachers in Jesus' time and before, um, but sort of in different forms. Rabbi Hillel famously said, was asked by a non-Jew to teach him the Torah. And Rabbi Hillel, being a little impatient, said, um, what is hateful to you, do not do to anyone else. This is the law, and this sums up the law and the prophets. Go and study it. So basically, he said, the sort of negative side of what Jesus says here. If it's hateful to you, don't do it to anybody else. That's the law and the prophets. That's the Torah. That's what you need to know. And Jesus says essentially the same thing, but from sort of the more positive, the other side. Do to others what you would have them do to you.
Well, you don't have to do anything to follow what Rabbi Hillel.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, yeah. That Josh points out you don't have to do anything to follow Rabbi Hillel's.
Disengage from people completely according to that.
Right.
Facts, because you don't risk harming anyone.
Right. Yeah, Josh says maybe it's best to under Hillel, it's best to just disengage from people so that you don't risk doing anything hateful to them. That's true. What Jesus says is arguably bigger, right? Arguably more difficult. Do to others what you would have them do to you in everything, in all circumstances. Treat others the way you would like them to treat you. If the situation were reversed, if it was going the other direction, what would you want? And Jesus says this sums up the law and the prophets. Everything that's there, in one way or the other, is addressed by that saying. It's one of those sayings that is so big that it's hard to sort of even think about how to make headway doing that. But I just think the point of it is to is to pull us up short all the time. If that's a rule for our lives, if that's a habit that we develop, to think about uh, how we would want to be treated, and to let that shape how we then treat other people, we will have gone a long way toward following Jesus and toward obeying Him. Um, I know it's a big statement, but do you have comments? Do you have thoughts about the golden rule or about anything that he says there?
Seems simple enough to me.
It's pretty straightforward,
Harder to do maybe, but it's simple to understand.
easy to understand, I think, easy to recite to yourself, harder maybe to do. Why don't we? Why is it that we don't behave this way? What are some of the things that keep us from behaving this way?
I think we sometimes think that we need to strike first, or you know, we're expecting people to treat us badly, so we want to get in there and do it to them first. That Yeah, I think a lot of people are like that, and
I've heard a joke made that the golden rule when more of us follow is do to others before they do unto you, and that's yeah, I mean, yeah, that's easy enough to
Yeah, a little backwards there.
easy to get into that habit, right? Strike first to anticipate. Um,
I think a lot of people, they don't follow it because they don't see the wisdom of it, really. There's a lot of wisdom there. If we could really apply that, our lives are going to be so much better. Your marriage is going to be better, your relationships with your neighbor, people at work, your family, it's all going to go better. But they don't see that. I don't know.
One of the problems I think is we just even those of us who recognize the goodness of the statement. I think one of the things that happens is just in the heat of the moment sometimes we just fail to do it. We just fail to show the grace and the love and the mercy that this requires, and um, we lash out and we retaliate and we escalate and we just fail to we fail to be as generous as we would hope someone else would be to us in the same circumstance. We get scared, we get angry, we get tense, and we just don't.
But just
Maybe we have
it's
a
just so,
memory problem.
and it's so funny
Knee
because it
jerks.
says, "Do unto others as you have them do unto you," and I think what stops us is that we're very self-focused.
Yeah.
Just so weird because you're very self-focused. So then treat that person that way, but you're so blinded by you that you forget to transfer it to others. You forget to treat them the way you want because the selfishness is so intense.
Yeah.
And we speak and think in those terms of I feel and I think and this is what I want. And we forget again, transfer it to others when we're treating them a certain way or should be treating them like we want to be. We don't even see them.
Yeah. 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 Good.
Now, what do you do in a situation where you hear somebody else judging somebody?
That's a great question.
Especially if it's a church member.
So if you hear someone judging someone and you're asking, what do you do then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think I think one response I would have is, maybe
That's wrong.
maybe show that person who is being judged, maybe show them a lot of grace and a lot of love, and to try to sort of counter the what you've seen from somebody else. I think there's a time sometimes where you can say to someone, that seemed awfully rough, the way, what you said seemed awfully rough, knowing that, they may not respond well to that, but sometimes we need to hear the things that don't make us happy, right? We need to hear the things that are uncomfortable to hear. And so sometimes maybe we need to, be able to say that. I think that good.
And I was thinking too that listening to them is okay. And they get to voice what they're feeling, especially if they're judging others, because maybe something's happened there. But I think then what we do, like Arlene is asking, we ask them, can you have a conversation with them?
Yeah.
Can you go and tell them how that has made you feel?
Yeah.
And can you talk to them and be honest and say that? And good night, that can change so many things.
Yeah.
I was thinking about a situation in our church that I was beginning to develop this resentment towards a member because of something I heard them say and I interpreted a different way. And so I was sitting in church and I thought, Colette, you know what to do. Go talk to them. Go ask them about what they're saying. And because you're developing this resentment towards this person. So I went and talked to him and I was dead wrong.
Mm.
And I said, oh, thank you, God, that you allowed me to go and ask the question and be in a conversation with them to clear it up. And sometimes when people in the church, for sure, Darlene, I think they mean well, they're just hurt. And sometimes we have to nudge them gently. And you go have a conversation with them. Maybe they didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
Or maybe you misunderstood them. And yeah, I think that goes along. At least that's been my experience on more than one occasion. But that's what happened just recently that helped me see how wrong I could be. And it helped me to treat them with grace and to know that just because I see it one way doesn't mean that's the way it is. I think they say it in school systems, especially in CPS, restorative conversations, that they call the kids to have that when they have a disagreement with each other or when they're judging one another. They sit them down and do this restorative thing. I like some of it and some of it I don't, but I think it's a good thing. Consequences are also good.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Jesus saying earlier in the Sermon on the Mount, if you remember, if you're offering your gift at the altar and remember that your brother has something against you, go and be reconciled to him, and then give your gift. Right?
Yeah.
Make that a priority. Make it a priority to be reconciled, to figure that out. And yeah, and a good conversation is really part of a big part of that. Yeah.
This had happened a couple of years ago in our church. Someone else said something. And remember, we used to have midweek on in the building, and so this one particular person was saying things, and I thought, what are they talking? It just made me And I went to talk to them, and they were just so almost telling me to submit, and why do I blah 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 blah. And that reminds me of what we talked about earlier in this passage. Don't throw your pearls to swine.
Yeah.
Why am I sitting here trying to have restorative conversation or a conversation to understand where that person's coming from? And they're beating me up with the words, or as the kids would say, they're gaslighting me. Why would I continue to do this? So I thought, I'm done. Yeah. I'm done, and keep my heart pure. When they talk, I go la 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 la. I don't want to hear them, and it keeps my heart pure when I do that. If I hear them, it's going to get me. But why try to help them to see differently or have a conversation about it? Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's making those decisions that are tough when you've tried to share with them or ask them why, be curious about why they're saying what they're saying when it still doesn't click or make sense to you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and that's right. Sometimes it gets to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a very good.
Hang on 1 second, Jacob. Go ahead.
Is being very critical about someone else and you don't know just simply say let's pray about it, because it's going to put the judgmental person in their place if they're irregardless, praying to God about another person is.
Mm.
Yeah.
So.
Laura points out that maybe if somebody's being judgmental, perhaps, it's good to go to them and say, let's pray about this person. Let's pray together about their situation. And yeah, sometimes being pushed to pray for someone will change your attitude
That's a
toward
great
them.
example.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
input.
I was talking about, as the scriptures say, Paul was telling the Galatians in chapter 5, the 13 and the 14. The liberty that we had, he said the liberty, we shouldn't use it for the flesh, but should use it in a manner of taking care of each other.
Mhm.
That's the reason why sometimes you may hear something about somebody in a church, a brother or a sister, you will hear something about him from other person. Yes. If you don't take care and you are not a spiritual minded, what you just heard, you that heard the thing, you take it against the fellow.
Yeah.
By not asking or trying your best to go into it to find out what exactly is going on. Like our sister Colette just said, if you didn't go and ask, you hold that in your heart, but that is not how it goes. You see, but if you hold the liberty as a serving one another, when you hear things like that, okay, let me go ahead and ask the brother what exactly is going on between you and this brother. Freely, if you heard his part or her part, you will see that, oh, that is not the point at all. This is not what's supposed to happen.
Mhm.
And you end up for settle a big issue with a small understanding,
Mhm.
so that things will be all right. That's the reason why we become a family in a different and a unique way. Yeah. Sometimes if you don't talk, if you don't ask, you can't solve a problem. You can't get the problem to solve too. You always be in, and then people think that, you are not doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That view of, we're free, we're free in Christ, and let's use the liberty we have to serve each other, to love one another, to care for each other. And that's the proper use of the freedom that Christ gives us. And yeah, that requires reconciliation. It requires those restorative conversations. It requires those times where we don't just go on, again, not judging by appearance, right? Not judging by the first thing we see, but by trying to make a right judgment, trying to understand the situation and understand the people involved and understand what they need and how we can be of service. Thank you guys very much for your good conversations. It is time for us to wind down for tonight, but